Okay, so you know me, and I'm here not as BPMNEXT, but as part of BPMessentials, which is a joint venture between my company and ITP Commerce, Stephan Fischli and Antonio Palumbo from ITP Commerce, and we're representing BPMessentials. And our topic is wizard-based generation of, quote, good BPMN. So our BPMessentials provides BPM training and certification, and we're best known for our BPMN Method and Style training, which is based on my book you see here. And method and style, what is that? Well, you know, BPMN, the spec says here's a bunch of shapes and symbols, and here's what they mean, and you can create models using that are executable, describe process behavior, but may or may not actually, even if you fulfill all the rules of the specification, achieve BPMN's actual most important goal, which is communicating visually the process logic. So good BPMN, what we mean by that, is our models, diagrams, in which the process logic, the modeler's intent, is obvious from the diagram itself. And I say from the printed diagram. So you don't have access to the tool, you just have PDF or paper. And so to do that requires things that go beyond the specification. It requires methodology. It requires additional conventions or constraints. That's the method and the style. And to help really learn that and use that, it's useful to have assistance from tools. That's very important. Now, achieving good BPMN's not so easy for a number of reasons, but here are two important reasons. One is that BPMN is inherently hierarchical in nature. So subprocesses are kind of amazing things because they allow you to collapse chunks of the process to a single activity. And so these hierarchical structures that you create using subprocesses allow you, within the context of a single definition, have sort of macro views, sort of bird's eye views of the process, so you can collapse down to one page, and detailed views without having to synchronize separate high-level and detailed models. So that's really valuable. But now you've got the problem of how I've got now each of these levels of the hierarchy in a separate page, and how do I sort of convey the process logic of this complex multi-page thing to someone who doesn't know my process, doesn't even know my terminology. That's difficult. So that's actually solved with something we call style rules. And you saw last year, if you came here, both ITP Commerce and Signavio showed how style rule validation was built into the tool. So that's kind of a solved problem at this point. A harder problem is this idea of structural integrity and consistency, because BPMN has this notion of orchestration. BPMN has the constraint that each activity in a process must correspond at the instance level one-to-one with the process instance. So if a process is, say, handling a customer service request, every activity in that process must handle that one activity, that one customer service request. So you cannot have an activity that's performed once a month or once per batch of 10 customer service requests. If you have those, they have to be in a separate process. So this is can be confounding to people, both learning BPMN for the first time and even so-called experienced users. So to solve this hierarchical problem, we use certain conventions to mechanical devices to be able to trace the logic between, say, one page of this stack of pages of the model and another. And so here's an example of it. A convention is that each distinct, or each end event of a process or subprocess should represent a distinct end state. That's not required. It's allowed by BPMN spec. It's not required. So method and style says, no, it's required. And there's validation rules. If you don't do that, it will sort of give you an error. And that applies at the activity level as well. So here we've got a simple order process where we enter the order, check the credit, and then we go to fulfill order, sub-process, followed by a gateway. Is it fulfilled okay? If yes or no. So someone who doesn't know your process might say, well, what the heck does that mean, fulfilled okay? That could be lots of things, right? But we drill down to the child level, and here we see that what we mean is, well, we check the stock, and as a result of that, if it's in stock, we pick the stock and ship it, and that reaches the end state, fulfilled okay. So there's this label matching between the gateway at the parent level and the end event at the child level. So even if my terminology, my process was completely unfamiliar to somebody, they could start at the top level of my diagram and drill down through these pages, and through this label matching technique, trace what I mean, as the logic gets more obvious as I drill down. So this is nothing profound about that, but it's very useful to assist people to get into the habit of this thing that maybe they find annoying at first to have to do it this way. To have a tool sort of give you a little violation, and pretty soon they learn to do it this way, and it helps their consumer, and pretty soon they learn it's not that burdensome to do it. All right, so this is the solved problem. Now the unsolved problem is this structural consistency. So the style part, that's simple, right? That's simple rules. But the methodology is difficult because, when you solicit your information from the stakeholders, and I've seen here some people have Shelley Sweet's new book, BPI Blueprint, which I recommend. How do you get the information from the stakeholders? You have meetings with them, what happened first, what happened next, and you get this information that, some of it's like the size of a grain of sand, and some of it's like the size of a mountain, and things all in between, and there's no instance alignment there, and you kind of write it down, right? So this whole concrete bottom-up approach is useful for information gathering, but if you just try to draw boxes and wire them together, it's not going to work. So what you really need to do is, in a second pass, take all that information and sort of reorganize it from a top-down, more abstract way. And top-down abstract thinking, well, architects can do it. Developers can do it. Business users, business analysts don't do it all that well. It's hard, okay? Believe me, I've been trying to do training in this for many years, and it's the hardest part. So we have this top-down methodology, and it works this way. So we say start by just scoping your process. Where does it start and end, and how does it end? And then decompose that. And as you decompose it into, say, no more than 10 steps, make sure that each of those steps is performed repeatedly on instances, and the instances corresponds one-to-one with the process instance. So we've sort of asked them to think about that at first. And if that activity could end in more than one way that affects the downstream behavior, to name those different ways. Those become the end states. And the end states determine what happens next, and so, from the style rules, we're going to have this label matching between the gateway and the end states. So in principle, if you do this in a systematic way, that translating that into BPMN, so-called good BPMN, that is following the method and style conventions, could be done by a tool. Because it's really sort of mechanical. So even though it should be automatic, for a user to sort of think this way, they're people, so it's difficult, certainly when they're first learning the vocabulary, to keep this stuff in mind too. So the solution that I've always wished for, I tried to build this myself and failed, but the ITP people kind of did it on their own, which is really nice, is building this into the tool. So it's kind of like a structured interview. So you're not asking users to draw a diagram, you're asking them questions, asking them the right questions, and having the tool generate the BPMN. So this idea of a structured interview reinforces the methodology without kind of getting lost in the syntax and the notation. So the idea of the one-to-one correspondence between the activity instance and the process instance, this notion of end states, the mapping of the end events to the end states, the matching of the gateway and gate labels to the end state labels. And there's another sort of label matching between parent and child that I didn't talk about, which is the message flows. So you have message flows at a child level should be replicated up to the parent with the same names, et cetera, for the same reason that it aids this logic translation. But it's kind of annoying extra thing that end users, the modelers have to do. And so it'd be nice if the tool just did that for you. All right, so here's a scenario that we use in the training, which is imagine you're a car dealer, new car dealer, and your order to cash process for your car dealership, and think about that. So what happens? So first, the customer submits, an order, some little signed piece of paper saying, I want this car for this price. And the car could either be in stock, in the dealer's stock, in which case we get out of stock, go to the service department, they do whatever they do to prepare it, wash it and do some dealer options, and then there's a closing ceremony where you give the cashier's check and you drive off with the car. That leads to the success end state. Or it could be that the customer decided they wanted this particular set of options that required a factory order, in which case the process needs to order the car from the factory. And as a result of that, we wait for the car and we receive it, after which we prepare for delivery and close like before. Or it turns out that there was some production delay from the factory and the customer says, I'm not going to wait, cancels the order, in which case we handle the order cancellation and we end in the process exception end state called delivery date problem. So here's a typical, I don't know if it's typical, but a scenario of a so-called real process that I would say most beginners would have difficulty modeling correctly, at least when they certainly get started. So let's see how that's done in the wizard.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, so it's my part. Hello, everybody. So I'm representing the ITpearls part. Here, ITpearls is the company which represents the German training of method and style in Europe. And Antonio, to my left-hand side, represents the ITP Commerce. He's the developer of this wizard. Just a word to this methodology. So we have a good methodology, so you made an understatement. So we have a lot of people today who likes this methodology. It becomes more and more the de facto standard in the market. And the 5-step methodology is just like that. We have to define first the process scope before we start with modeling, the start point and the end point. It closes the process. We have to decompose then the major steps in the process. It's just a list normally in the first part. If we go to this process, means each step is an activity, is work to do. We name it with substantive and verb. We enumerate the end states, and states. It's a very important thing in this method. And for each end state, we have to define the next activity we go through. The third step is to generate the top-level flow of the diagram. That means we have to order the activities and find the exception states of that process. Not every process has a regular end state. Probably are more than 2 or 3 end states. We have to name it. We have also to find the exclusive situations as well as the parallels, but we are not listen here. It's another scene. So the fourth step is the sub-processes. This is hard work to do. Yeah? So we have to go to every activity and make the same thing in a kind of loop, finding repeating work, the good activities of that sub-process. And to the end, we have to align the message flows and define the lanes from other participants on the process, which was not yet recognized probably, and we will do that in a demo right now. So we go through that steps. So what we are can see here, so now I have no sound, it's the wizard with the 5 steps. So we go to the first step of that, and so as you can see here, we have to name the process, we have to name the diagram. We have as well to define an end state, and of course our main participant, so in that case is the customer. And we have a normal end state of the process. Yep, Antonio?
So this is what a regular process would start and end with. So maybe we can add an additional end state, like as Bruce was mentioning before, an exceptional end state could be a delivery date problem. So, and of course, we have the possibility to add some more, but...
Looks good. Yeah, I think you can go to the next step. So just go forward, Antonio, one step. Okay, so here you have done a little bit of work. So I think we have named the main activities here. So what we have to do now is to find the end states, the potential end state for every activity.
There's no order here. It's just how I came up with them. And now we could think, what are the possible end states for each of these activities? We heard before the enter order, for example.
Factory order required.
Okay, well, we could
Okay.
order.
Keep it consistent with this scenario.
Fair enough. Okay. Okay. So if we look at the order car from factory, what could happen here? So the ideal case is car received. So the factory delivers the car, or
order canceled, I think.
Yeah, order cancelled. For whatever reason, maybe the customer's not happy with the suggested time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay,
That's
wonderful.
Much it. We'll leave the other ones.
So I would say we go one step forward and speed up a little bit. What we see here, it's the flow, the sequence flow. We have to define here from top to down, I think. We go through the various...
Now this was generated by the tool for now. I haven't done anything here. I just clicked next and this is what it just suggested to me. Obviously we'll have to do some changes because it's not always, doesn't always make sense. But what we do is we really take an activity and say which activity follows that activity. So if you look at the enter order activity, if it ends with the state in stock, we would assume that the car is good for delivery, so we prepare it for delivery. If the car is not on stock or a factory order is required, then we'll order the car from the factory. Once we order the car from the factory, if the car is received, again, we just prepare the car for delivery, right? And if the order has been cancelled, we handle the order cancellation. After we handle the order cancellation,
Delivery date problem.
Delivery date problem, that's right. When in delivery date problem, prepare car for delivery, close and deliver. Close and deliver ends on the state order completed.
Yeah, this looks not bad, sort of from the first point of view. Can you show me a preview?
Yeah,
Give me a chance to what we have done here. That's the first cut of this process model, so we get that. So we have the main flow, we have the exception state, we have the end states defined, we have the process start on it. Yeah, it looks great. I would say we go to the hard work, speed up a little bit, and go to the sub-process for the order car from factory. So I let Antonio a little bit work on that. So this is a process, sub-process. We have to place the factory order. So what can happen there? So the factory will get the order. We have to wait for a message from the factory, which says us how is this order handled, means receive the production date of my car or whatever I like to do there. So the production date or the order, the delivery date could be a normal date. That means that the date is acceptable for the customer, or it's not a normal date, it's late. So we have, in the case of late, we have to calculate a new delivery date. So nobody likes to buy no cars, so we try to get another delivery date, confirm this delivery date with the customer again. So if the customer says, no, I do not like to have this date, so we'll terminate on that point the process. And if customer says, yes, okay, I confirm that late delivery date, we go and wait for the car. It's the same entry point as if we have a normal date. Yeah, and in the end of the sub-process, the car has been received from the factory, and the sub-process will be done on that point. To go to an answer, just to ensure that we're not are the wrong place. Have it right in my head. Yeah.
So that will be it.
Looks not bad. But what's actually it's missing is the collaboration model. So there is, of course, a collaboration inside with the factory. So we have also involved the customer. This will be done in step 4. 5. in step 5. So in step 5, we have to define the additional participant. That is, of course, the factory, as I said. And then we need to create the collaboration model. That means the message flows and their direction in or out of our process. Probably we go through the steps here. So we have in place the factory. It's an outgoing message flow to the factory. So we get back the factory order confirmation with a new date. And with the customer, we have to send the confirmation request for the late delivery. And of course, we have to wait for the confirmation or not of this date. So this means we will have at least 4 additional message flows, and then the collaboration model will be completed in that sub-process. Probably we get it all together, and the model will do all the work for us. So I have had the chance to play this in the last half year, various times with customers in my trainings, and it was really interesting how people will react on such a concept of creating a diagram. So probably we can show the created with here. It's really not a bad looking here. So we have the context level with the customer, the factory, the collaboration model. It's propagated in the top level as well in the as in the sub process. Or probably we can go to the sub process, and here. No, that's the top level. Yeah, back to the top level. And here we have the whole collaboration model. It is order car from factory.
So you notice that all those things that I talked about in the method and style, which is like matching the gateway labels and the end state labels, replicating the message flow names, it's hard for beginners to remember. It's kind of annoying for people to do if they're not used to doing it. The tool, it's mechanical, it's rules-based, so the tool can just do it for you. By sort of structuring the questions in terms that the modeler or the business user can understand without really having to know all the details of BPMN. So I think that's worked pretty well.
And the good thing is it's free of syntax errors and free of BPMessentials means method and styles errors. So it's a wonderful place. Thank you. So we're a little bit late. Are there questions from the audience to us?